Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From the breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. The Kremlin accuses European countries of planning to militarize themselves rather than seek peace, as military chiefs gather in Britain to discuss Ukraine protections. Sirens sounded in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as Israel says intercepted a missile launched from Yemen as hostilities with the Iran-backed Houthis intensifies. Police in India's northern state of Punjab detained hundreds of farmers and bulldozed their protest site, where camps had been set up for over a year to demand better crop prices. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels take control of a key mining hub in eastern DRC, the latest territory seized in its advance, despite Rwandan and Congolese presidents discussing peace in Qatar. And a jury in the U.S. orders a climate advocacy group Greenpeace to pay over $600 million in damages after being accused of orchestrating violence and defamation by an American pipeline operator. Hello and welcome. We start with the big update coming in from the West Asian country of Turkiye, where massive protests have erupted over the detention of Mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem Imamoglu. Now, clashes broke out between protesters and the police in Istanbul as thousands gathered outside the city's municipality. Student protesters scuffled with officers outside the Istanbul University, trying to push through a line of riot police who used pepper spray pellets to disperse the angry crowd. Turkiye's capital city, Ankara, also remains on edge as thousands came out in protest and chanted anti-government slogans. The opposition Republican People's Party of the CHP held a massive rally in Ankara against the detention of the Istanbul mayor. They raised slogans against President Erdogan, calling him a dictator and asking the government to resign.
Turkey started the day with a major political attack by the Erdogan government, which is trying to extend its political life by targeting the people's right to vote and be elected, the will of the people and those they elect. Erdogan and the narrow interest group around him have attempted a clear coup on the people's right to vote and be elected. This is an all-out attack on the nation. They cannot win through elections or resorting to tyranny. The target is not only the Republican People's Party but our people themselves. Our mayor has been repeatedly targeted by the government's attacks because he defeated Erdogan at the ballot box 4 times.
In the latest, Ekrem Imamoglu's party has called for more protests across Istanbul as the powerful mayor continues to remain in police custody. Opposition leaders, including Imamoglu's wife, have urged citizens to raise their voices. Several streets have been blocked and some metro lines have also cancelled their services. Public gatherings have been banned in the city under 4 days restrictions.
It is not just Ekrem Imamoglu who was detained this morning. It is the will of Istanbul, with a population of 16 million, who was detained this morning.
The detention of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem Imamoglu came just days ahead of his nomination as a presidential candidate for the 2028 elections. Ekrem Imamoglu is the strongest rival against President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Imamoglu, a secular Republican People's Party leader, has been detained on charges of corruption and aiding a terrorist group. Last year, Erdogan faced his worst electoral defeat in nationwide municipal elections, when Imamoglu's party swept Turkiye's major cities and even defeated Erdogan's AK party in former strongholds.
For a long time, there was a threat. These mayors were being threatened. They were targeted, for example, with the city agreement, a deal between parties to support each in mayoral elections. For example, with wrong and false news. And these things happened yesterday. They're stealing people's votes.
The latest video shows Imamoglu being escorted by police for a health checkup after detention. The Istanbul mayor's detention caps months-long legal crackdown in Turkey on opposition leaders, journalists and other popular figures. Erdogan government's actions have been criticized as a politicized attempt to hurt electoral prospects and silence dissent. The next battle for the ballot in Turkey is still a few years away, but Erdogan has reached his two-term limit as president after having earlier served as prime minister. If Erdogan wants to run again, he must call an early election or change the constitution. For now, brewing anger against Erdogan certainly seems to have snowballed with his latest move to arrest the Istanbul mayor. Is Turkey headed toward a people's revolution or a massive crackdown by its leader? Our next story takes us to Gaza, where Israel has reignited hostilities. Now, just days after deadly airstrikes that killed at least 400 Palestinians, Israel restarted its brutal ground assault in the Gaza Strip. Israel bombarded Gaza and pressed its ground operations after issuing what it called the last warning for Palestinians to return hostages and to remove Hamas from power. Israeli forces have restarted ground operations in the central and southern Gaza Strip. The latest offensive comes after weeks of reduced fighting. Reports from Gaza say over 70 people were killed by Israel in the pre-dawn attacks. And with that, the latest death toll since Tuesday stands over 500. Now, yesterday, Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz issued a video statement.
Residents of Gaza, this is the last warning. The first sin war destroyed Gaza. The airstrike against Hamas terrorists was only the first step. What is coming will be more difficult, and you will pay the price. Soon, the evacuation of residents from combat zones will begin again. If they don't return the Israeli hostages and Hamas is not being removed from Gaza, Israel will act with force like you haven't seen before.
In this message, he makes it clear that something big is coming. This was the warning, a message of sorts, that ground assault is about to start. Now, Israel's demand was clear: return hostages and remove Hamas. The Israeli army says its forces are pushing deeper into central and southern Gaza. Troops have re-entered areas they previously withdrew from, and this includes the strategic Netzarim corridor, a key strip of land that divides northern Gaza from the south. Israel says the goal is to create a buffer zone between the north and the south. That will effectively is put Israel under control of an area, and it is aimed to prevent Hamas from getting too close to Israeli territory. Now, as Israel once again rejected international calls to stay committed to the ceasefire, Gazans were left trapped between falling airstrikes and closed borders.
They were sitting in the tent, and a missile fell on them. He and his mother were martyred. They left me. My wife was pregnant. The fetus was also martyred.
Khan Yunis and Rafah especially are seeing renewed killings. Both of these places are already packed, filled with Palestinians who had fled the north. A United Nations staff member was killed and 5 others were injured in fresh Israeli bombings. Since the start of the war in 2023, at least 28 UN employees have been killed.
Secretary General was deeply saddened and shocked to learn of the death of a United Nations Office for Project Services staff member when 2 UN guest houses in Deir el-Bala were hit in strikes. 5 other UN personnel were seriously injured. The locations of all UN premises are known to the parties to the conflict, who are bound by international law to protect them and maintain their absolute inviolability.
Israel is facing growing calls to cease its actions in the Palestinian Strip. Protests have broken out in New York, Tel Aviv and Spain. Thousands in Jerusalem took part in a rally to oppose Netanyahu's orders. Israel is calling its decision a military necessity, and Hamas isn't backing down either. The price of this fleeting ceasefire is human lives. Until both sides confront each other and decide to find a solution, Gaza will remain a place where war keeps writing the headlines. And for our next story, let's look at Vietnam, where a mere toy has spiraled into a political storm. The trouble began with a popular Chinese-made baby 3 dolls. On its face was a small symbol, one that looked harmless at first glance. Now, this toy was a go-to for Vietnamese kids. They were selling like hotcakes before the controversy hit, and then these bestsellers became untouchables, with Vietnamese stores pulling them off the shelves. The symbol below the doll's eye looked like a simple curved shape with pink meandering lines, but to many in Vietnam, it resembled China's 9-dash line. When they noticed it, a wave of online backlash followed. It became a matter of respecting national pride and sovereignty. China's 9-dash line is a map marking that Beijing uses to claim most of the South China Sea. Now, this claim cuts into waters that Vietnam, the Philippines, and other countries also claim as their own. For Vietnam, it's not just a harmless doodle. It's a constant reminder of China's attempts to assert over the Flashpoint waterway. That's why the strong and swift reaction poured in. Selling dolls with that symbol was seen as spreading Chinese propaganda. For many, it was about standing up against territorial overreach, even if it came in the subtle form of a toy. In response to the rage that made it to the internet, Vietnam's government stepped in to take matters into its own hands. The Trade Ministry had ordered an inspection of the toys. Some vendors wiped it off their stores completely to avoid public anger. Reports say that some vendors sold at least 100 dolls daily, with each priced at $20. But what started as a top-selling toy became a liability. Sales dwindled, shelves were emptied, and shopkeepers hurried to distance themselves from this matter. The once booming toy rush just vanished without a trace. Such a similar controversy also took shape in 2023. Back then, it was Greta Gerwig's movie Barbie, starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. Vietnam banned the film from cinemas because some scenes reportedly portrayed the Chinese 9-dash line. In the end, it's a reminder that geopolitics can show up in the smallest places. Even a mark on a toy's face or a scene from a movie can become more than just entertainment and evolve into a battleground for discussion. A simple line to some can become an unshakable sense of pride for others. They may be joined by countries, but erased by those who refuse to accept it. And video games often stir controversies, but it's not every day that a game is called out in Japan's parliament. Ubisoft's latest installment, Assassin's Creed Shadows, has found itself in the center of a major controversy. Japan's Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, has condemned the game, calling it an insult to the country. Now, Japanese Prime Minister's remarks added to the growing outrage over the game's portrayal of Japanese history and culture. Over 100,000 people have signed a petition accusing Ubisoft of historical inaccuracies and a lack of respect. The matter has now become a national concern. The game, set in the 16th century feudal Japan, features Yasuke, an African samurai as one of its central characters. Now, historical records reportedly confirm the existence of Yasuke. He arrived in Japan with the Jesuit missionaries and later served under the warlord Oda Nobunaga. Now, his actual rank and role remain debated among historians. Some argue that he was a samurai, while others believe that he was a bodyguard or a servant. Now, the controversy escalated further after a Japanese lawmaker questioned the game's depiction of a real-life religious site, the Etate Hyozu Shrine. Now, in a promo video, Yasuke is shown rampaging through the shrine, and he is seen smashing sacred artifacts, including drums, mirrors, and altars. He is also seen slashing figures resembling priests. Now, the lawmaker revealed that the shrine's chief priest had never been contacted for permission to use the location's name, hence raising concerns about the game's treatment of cultural heritage. Prime Minister Ishiba took even a stronger stance, and he vowed to explore legal action against the game. He declared, and I quote, "It is absolutely unacceptable to vandalize a shrine. It is nothing but an insult to the country." Adding fuel to the fire, Japanese social media users have pointed out a string of historical and cultural inaccuracies in the game. Some noted that the tatami mats are square instead of rectangular. Others were amused by the presence of watermelons. They were set in scenes during the cherry blossom season, and this pointing out that watermelons are a summer fruit in Japan and not a spring delicacy. Now, Ubisoft has yet to officially respond to the backlash, but the controversy raises larger questions about creative liberties in historical fiction. How much accuracy should game developers strive for when depicting real cultures and events? Where is the line between artistic expression and cultural insensitivity? For now, Assassin's Creed Shadows is making headlines in Japan for reasons far beyond its gameplay. Whether the backlash will affect its sales or simply fuel curiosity, that remains to be seen. But if there's one thing the Assassin's Creed franchise has always been good at, it's surviving a bit of controversy. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on